The evening sky bled into hues of orange and violet, the kind of twilight that seems to hold two emotions at once, hope and sorrow. In the quiet village, the air carried the scent of bamboo and tilled earth. There, at the edge of a small garden, stood Two Deep. Her hands brushed against the tender leaves of the vegetables she had tended through countless days of waiting. Each leaf seemed to hold a memory of promises once made and broken. For months, James had vanished into the silence of Cambodia, gone without explanation, swallowed by a land far from this modest village. To the outside world, James was a CEO, a man of staggering ambition and power. But to her, and especially to the little girl with bright eyes, he was none of those things. He was simply the man who had promised to come back, promised to sit at the family table again, promised to be more than a shadow in their lives. The question that lingers. Mom, the little girl tugged at Two Deep's hand, her voice soft yet piercing. Will Uncle James come today? Deep swallowed the ache rising in her chest. She forced a smile and whispered, maybe, sweetheart. Maybe today, she said it as though repeating the words could make them true. But deep inside, doubt screamed louder. If he returned, what then? Would her daughter look into his eyes and call him Dad? Or had the long years of absence built walls too tall for love to climb? The man on the plane, far away, James sat rigid in his airplane seat. His reflection quivered in the oval window, a man caught between two worlds. Cambodia had been his cage, filled with endless negotiations, betrayals that cut deep, and nights spent with despair as his only companion. And yet, through every storm, one vision sustained him, the image of returning to Two Deep and their daughter, Nay. He carried no jewels, no trophies of victory, only scars, regrets, and the quiet hope that it would be enough. The moment of return. When he finally arrived at the village, James nearly collapsed at the sight of Deep waiting in the garden. Her eyes widened, not with surprise, but with a storm of emotions too long suppressed. He longed to speak, to explain, to beg for forgiveness, but his words died the moment Nay peeked from behind her mother. The child stared at him, her eyes innocent yet carrying questions she could not yet voice. James bent down, his body trembling, his voice breaking, Nay. It's me. For a long moment, silence filled the air, as though even nature held its breath. Then, slowly, James reached out, hesitantly but bravely, and took her tiny hand in his. Her lips parted. A voice fragile yet powerful slipped out. Are you my dad? Tears blurred James's vision. In that instant, he understood. The answer was not his to give, it was hers to decide. All he could do was hold her hand tighter, praying that one day she would call him that word, not out of obligation, but out of love. A fragile invitation. Deep, standing nearby with tears welling in her eyes, knew this was the beginning of a new chapter. Not perfect, not without scars, but a beginning, nonetheless. Come inside, she finally said quietly. It's getting cold. Her words were simple, but James heard the guardedness. They were a shield forged from months of solitude and disappointment. Still, it was an invitation, and that was enough. Inside, the humble meal waited. Stir-fried vegetables, a bowl of soup, and steaming rice. Nothing like the grand feasts James once hosted in glittering towers. But tonight, it was everything. He sat opposite Nay, hands awkwardly folded, afraid to disturb the fragile peace. Then, without warning, the words slipped from her lips. Eat, Dad. It came naturally, almost unconsciously, as though she had carried it within her all along. James froze, his vision blurred, his head bowing quickly to hide the tears that spilled. That single word, Dad, was heavier than any crown he had ever worn, more precious than any fortune he had ever held. The long road to forgiveness, too deep, watched silently. She did not smile, but her eyes softened just slightly. Forgiveness, she knew, could not be given overnight. It had to be earned, day after day, meal after meal, presence after presence. That night, James lay awake long after the house had gone quiet. Listening to Nay's breathing, to Deep's gentle movements in the next room, he swore to himself, never again would he let this home slip through his fingers. To be called Dad was not a title to demand, it was a promise to keep, learning to stay. The next morning, James woke before dawn. He stepped outside into the crisp air, the fields stretching endlessly before him. For years he had lived in boardrooms and airports where ambition was the only currency. But here, in this simple village, he felt peace, and a crushing responsibility. Nay's laughter broke the silence. She ran barefoot toward the chicken coop, her small hands gripping a basket too big for her. Careful, James called, his voice more tender than he expected. Too Deep emerged soon after, hair tied back, moving with quiet efficiency. She did not greet him but bent to the garden. James walked toward her, heart pounding. Deep, he said softly. She did not look up. I know words can't repair the time I lost. But let me help now. Let me be part of this. She finally met his gaze, neither warm nor cold, but cautious. Actions, James. Nay doesn't need promises. She needs presence. The words cut him deeper than any betrayal he had faced in Cambodia. Yet they also anchored him. Taking the basket from her hands, James knelt to gather herbs, dirt clinging to hands once skilled only with contracts and pens. Redemption in the smallest things. Days turned into weeks. James stayed. He carried water. Repaired fences. Helped Nay with her lessons, awkwardly at first, but always patient. Neighbors whispered in disbelief. The once untouchable CEO now lived like a farmer. But James no longer cared. At night, he and Deep sat outside beneath the stars. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't. Silence was no longer sharp, it was becoming a bridge. One evening, she finally asked, "Why Cambodia?" James inhaled deeply. I was running, from enemies, from the ruins of my company, from myself. But every night, no matter where I went, I saw your face. And hers. I realized I wasn't escaping. I was abandoning. And that I will regret until my last breath. Deep turned away, a tear slipping silently down her cheek. She did not forgive him, not yet. But her heart, long frozen, was beginning to thaw. The shadows of the past. Just as James began to believe he could truly earn the word, Dad, through steady presence and patience, the shadow of his past returned. One night, as wind rattled the fragile windows, a phone call came. A voice he thought silenced whispered, "You can't hide in the fields forever, James. We will come for what is ours." Redemption, it seemed, would not come without trials. Lessons from a return. James's homecoming is more than a story of a man returning from Cambodia. It is a meditation on love, loss, and the fragile work of repair. Time. Lost time can never be reclaimed, but it can be redeemed through presence. Love. Not measured in wealth or words, but in attention and constancy. Innocence. Children remind us that they crave love more than gifts, presence more than promises. Redemption. It does not arrive in grand gestures but in humility, kneeling in soil, carrying water, learning to live faithfully. We may all wander. We may all disappear for a time. But when we return, our greatest responsibility is not to prove success to the world, but to prove love to those who waited for us.